unfortunate day has come for many of us college football fans. The day of which we have to say a final goodbye to yet another college football season. It's been a road full of trials and tribulations that none have ever seen before. The first time the 12-team playoff has been established in this world of sports hell, and it truly lived up to said name. But as we know, only one program in the nation can reach the true crown of college football immortality. We have a bunch of opt-out shitfests we call bowl games as appetizers before and during the main course. It's like the bread at Red Lobster. No matter how full you get, you are never satisfied. No point in burning any more time because we have a lot of football hilarity to cover. So for one last time in the 2024 season, let's recap the chaos.
I'd like to salute our military veterans.
Before we get to our cornucopia of bowl games, it's necessary to touch on the unpredictable nature that is the Army-Navy rivalry game. Bowl game that's before bowl season, but some still consider it a bowl. It's the only football game in which every player on the field is willing to fight for the right for us to watch them be on said field. I salute you all. No matter who wins this game, the real winners are America and Notre Dame football. At this point, they've set themselves up as hype men for the Irish. I mentioned previously that I consider it a good idea for Army to invest a moment of their practice into learning how to perform the forward pass. I understand now as to why they don't bother. They're as successful doing that as I am with women. When the run game is shut down, they become the Bush League of service academies. This and Blake Horvath's destruction of his opposition became all apparent as the game progressed. 7 pass attempts later, Army's magical season was undone by that of the Navy.
Not the Navy!
I'd say that this finally puts the whole Army should have been in the playoffs thing to rest, but I'm willing to bet that there are some clowns out there who are willing to use the postseason games don't matter excuse. Expect to hear that more often than not. But hey, even though Bryson Daly didn't get his spot as a Heisman finalist, you got the Joe Moore Award to remedy that. And a new running back spot on the depth chart, because the only rule in the transfer portal is fuck you. We start our bowl season with what I would consider the preamble to Alabama versus Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Don't worry, we'll have plenty more opportunities to dunk on that shit show. Being welcomed to his second start of the season, Bishop Davenport would be the one to lead the Jaguars to victory. Jaguars and victory are not two words common with each other, so this was quite the surprise. Though the Brown Horsies put up a great fight, this postseason taught us that anyone with a horse as their logo is not allowed to feel any sort of happiness. If they had a Jeremiah Webb, this result might have been reversed, since he quite literally disemboweled your secondary. Hell, you should feel worse for losing to a team that can't even make a 22-yard field goal. Is that common in the Sun Belt? Nonetheless, South Alabama doubled the yards of the Broncos, so this was no surprise. A good win for the fellas down in Mobile, and a good opportunity to troll their brother from the SEC, which you bet they took advantage of. And yes, it undoubtedly worked. Although you lost a contributing freshman and your offensive coordinator, the future looks bright for Major Applewhite. The Broncos will spend their time doing as everyone else will, looking for transfers to fill the gaps of transfers who left to other schools. Welcome to the new age of college football. The NCAA will spend more time buying more jugs of ice cream than they will trying to fix it. I'm honestly convinced there are more people who watch this game who actually drank Scooter's coffee. Again, for anyone wanting the Squidtard Bowl, I'm all open for sponsorship. Anyway, Memphis has had a phenomenal season, up against West Virginia, whose season was comparable to a watermelon up the sphincter. The season would end seemingly the same way. Memphis punched them in the mouth early and took their lunch money. It took all the way up until the second quarter for the Mountaineers to exist, where Garrett Green once again remembered how to throw a football. Their defense struggled though to learn how to defense. My lord, it's like Neil Brown never left. Thing was though, no matter how many gut punches the Tigers dropped on the West Virginia Mountaineers, they would not die. If only they tried this in the regular season, maybe then they wouldn't be staring down a losing record. Some dark magic by Hudson Clement later, and the Mountaineers are right back in it. In tomfoolery like this, there can only be one winner.
Get the snap back. 21 seconds. See Victor! Elijah Herring! Ball comes out! Ball is bouncing at the 35, and who fell on it?
After video review, The Memphis player that intercepted the ball was sliding, therefore he was down. It's first down Memphis on the 28-yard line.
That's right. Above all else, the true winner of these games is ref ball. You can cry about the rules all you want, but next time, try and defend the backfield maybe once or twice. Memphis slides their way into an 11-win season with a smexy new coaching contract for Ryan Silverfield. Well done. Knowing the parity of the group of five, it might be centuries before we see that again. West Virginia fans can take solace in the fact that user error ended the tenure of Neil Brown. Now, who did they end up getting from the coaching carousel? What? Are you shitting out my ass? First Scott Frost has survived back at UCF, and now the second coming of Rich Rod is here? 2024? You never get enough of it. This is either the best decision they could have made, or it really is almost hell. West Virginia. Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. One thing I can always respect is when both teams wear their home jerseys, ensuring a uniform matchup intoxicating to look at. There's no guarantee the actual game offers the same feeling. After getting disemboweled by Jacksonville State in their conference championship, the Hilltoppers desperately needed a morale boost to wrap up their season. Unfortunately for them, all that arrived at their doorstep was more pain. James Madison, meanwhile, got cucked by the injury bug and would be without their starting quarterback. Billy Atkins, who has thrown a total of 3 passes in the last 2 years, would have to take over. Despite this fact, he would go out there and ball out a little better than what the Hilltoppers expected. They were so discombobulated that they kept fumbling the football every time they got it. This all but ensured a big red pile of doo-doo would be all they would produce on the field. 300 passing yards matters very little when you keep handing the ball back to your opponent before you can score. I could troll you for that, but Eric O'Neal did more than enough of that. Damn, dude, I'm surprised you have any more arrows in the quiver after hitting Mac Brown with 70 of them. President Football would finish out the season with their first bowl win in school history. A huge step forward for what was recently an FCS program. Anytime now, North Dakota State. Anytime now. Western Kentucky can take solace in the fact that, you're playing football next season? Woo! And you're not in Tank Conference. Yet. The art of sport, they call it. There's certainly some sport here, but I would not call this art.
More like belongs in the trash.
Every time Cal is put in the national spotlight, it's another reminder that this is the only team in the Power 5 that managed to get beat by the Lord of all tanks in Florida State, which could be one of the many reasons why the transfer portal has not been too kind to them. 2 of your biggest contributors have skedaddled their way out of California. UNLV can sympathize with you as this is an experience they have become fully used to. Haj Malik Williams has taken the mantle of frontrunner for most of the season. For this game, he's taken the Jalen Milroe route of being a secondary running back overthrowing the ball. His passing game was outdone by not just CJ Harris, but also their own team's punter. A perfectly executed fake punt was one of the many things that guided the Rebs past the Berkeley defense. Turns out when the opposing team turns the ball over and you don't, you're more likely to win. Shocking revelation, I know. I think I just gave Purdue fans a brain blast. Anyway, a few defensive stands by UNLV, and the LA Bowl was theirs. Their first bowl win in 24 years. The ACC starts their bowl season getting let down by Cal. Hopefully this isn't a continuing trend in the postseason. A great end to the Barry Odom era as he bails for the brain aneurysm makers at Purdue. This does leave a coaching spot open for somebody, and if you thought Rich Rod's return to the country roads is crazy, get ready for this one. Darth Mullen has returned to the game of football! Long live development! Both of these teams also got the memo that if you want more people to watch your bowl game, show up in the color rush uniforms. It's quite the working strat. Under the lights of the Superdome, Sam Houston's Hunter Watson would put up what is probably going to stay the best offensive performance in that stadium this postseason. Hell, they're doing more than the Saints can this year. And this is with an acting head coach. Brad Cornelson took over for Casey Kaler as he bailed for Temple. You're welcome for telling you that because there's no way you knew that. Both quarterbacks threw up stats reminiscent of Kyle McCord's time at Syracuse. Watson of that of Kyle McCord in his prime, and JC French of that of the Pittsburgh game. Because every time it was his turn to throw, it would be right to the other team. It was like watching someone trying to throw on the Heisman CPU in the video games.
Come on. No! No! No!
Though the Eagles outgained the Bearcats in yards by a significant margin, the lack of turnovers from Sam Houston gave them a major advantage. Here's a synopsis of JV French's performance.
A little bit more, but exceptional by Gaither.
Sam Houston State claims their first FBS bowl win in program history and secures a huge improvement from the previous season. In their search for a new coach, they've picked up the legendary Phil Longo from Wisconsin, who only 93% of their fan base wanted fired, and the other 7% didn't know who he was. So, good luck with that. Georgia Southern also gets cucked by the Big Ten as they lose a major linebacker to Nebraska, along with other pieces. Revive, rebuild, and recruit a new quarterback. Two conference champions battling it out for the right to see who the 5th to 7th best group of 5 team in the country is. Truly a battle of our time. With Rich Rod taking Cam Vaughn and making his way out to the country roads, it'd be interesting to see what they'd bring to the table. Ohio is in a similar position, as Tim Albin skedaddled to Charlotte for some reason. Rather than choosing to dive into the gambling carousel, they chose to promote offensive coordinator Brian Smith to head coach. The result of this year's Cure Bowl would tell me more about how well set Ohio is than the fellows from Alabama. Parker Navarro entering his final game would burn the Gamecock defense on all fronts, making key plays when needed, running when necessary, elite ball placement. He would provide all the opportunities and more for the commentators to give the super suck to Patrick Mahomes. Tyler Huff did a similar shredding to the Ohio defense, but without the de facto run game the Bobcats had, it was a losing fight. Thus, this set up a first half ass stomping for the Redbirds, figuratively and very literally. Though Jacksonville State sought to fight back in the second half, the lead was just too significant to overcome. Only in Conference USA could the conference champion receive a 5th loss. Not all is terrible for the Cocky-Walkies though, as their performance attracted your next football coach, Charles Kelly, yet another branch from the Saban coaching tree. Good things are yet to come. Brian Smith has already made a significant move at Ohio, assuring 11 wins for the first time in program history. Also, remember when I said Parker Navarro was entering this final game for the Bobcats? Yeah, it turns out that's bullshit. He's coming back for more action. And all who celebrate shout hooray. Welcome back to the postseason, Florida. Couldn't have come at a better time considering the hot water that Billy Napier has found himself in. Florida has done a great job turning the season around, with a win here confirming said turnaround. With the Brown Wave missing Darian Mensah because he got bought out by Duke, they would have to look up to up-and-coming 5-star Ty Thompson. Said 5-star rating got retracted faster than Jaden Rashada in the transfer portal after watching this performance. Despite several gifts from DJ Lagway, Tulane had no intent on making any sort of leeway with it. This set up what was an astounding 6-0 at the half. And after all the work the stadium crew did to paint those end zones, they've not even been able to see anyone get there. Thankfully, Lagway finally put the Gators in the end zone late in the third quarter. Following that was Tulane really putting the whole Brown Wave name to mind and producing an offense so dead I thought it was at the necrophiliac convention. Thankfully, their own incompetence, though painful to look at, was undone by the pinnacle of glory. Supreme Tank Desmond Watson was given the football in a running play. I can't believe these Tulane defenders even had the balls to run into that. Put him in the combine now. Along with this heavenly moment in sports history, Florida would claim their 8th win, flipping the entire tenure of Billy Napier. And this is great for everyone, because now we'll be able to make that joke for the next 2 years. You're welcome, by the way, because Tennessee will be gifting you another season with Lagway and Tyreek Sapp returning. Though this was a disappointing finish for Tulane, they managed to keep Ty Thompson around in an era of transfer foolery. Though he's not a quarterback anymore and has now been switched to a tight end. He's got a point. I want to be as far away from Desmond Watson as possible on the field too. Now then, we interrupt our usual presentation of bowl games to bring you the first of many college football playoff games. And here's where it all began. No, not just the 12-team playoff, but all of the narratives that came with it. For the first time in over 30 years, NBC would be cucked by another network for the rights to the Notre Dame home games. You know what else is getting cucked? Indiana and Kirk Cignetti. With a schedule as soft as my shit after inhaling every laxative in the house, saying they got the easy route to the playoffs is a major understatement. This is an incredible accomplishment for Cignetti and Indiana as their best year in program history, and it's certainly no doubt they deserve their spot here. But just like anyone investing in meme coins, the eventual crash was inevitable. Coaching can only close so many gaps, especially when high-end talent meets the low end. Rudy took to the Hoosiers and dismantled them piece by piece. Curtis Pork was never able to move past the iron wall that was the Notre Dame defense. Their own defense knew that they were cooked the moment Jeremiah Love went from their own end zone all the way to another 7 points within the span of 2 seconds. The run game and the defense cooked to perfection at home. What's going to stick as a familiar trend in the college football playoffs, Indiana simply found themselves into a hole that was just too significant to claw out of. It would be easier to ice skate out of a bucket of piss than trying to unscrew themselves out of this deficit. Indiana's playoff run ended the moment Cignetti woke up in the morning on the 20th. Still, the Hoosiers had a phenomenal season with Curtis Pork, who was rumored to be playing the entire year through a re-torn ACL. Talk about dedication. The Fighting Irish advanced to the quarterfinals where Mickey Mouse and the Magic Kingdom await in the Superdome. If you need directions on what to do to beat them, well, Google it.
So we don't just beat top 25 teams, we beat the shit out of them. Okay.
A new day and a new slate of games, which are all playoff games. I'm looking forward to some exciting games of football, with both sides bringing their absolute best onto the field.
Overland picked off, and it's coming back to Luka. Touchdown!
Son of a Jermaine Burton, not again. In a battle of Tank Conference versus Big Game James Franklin, even the likes of Franklin's horrific record versus the top ranked has nothing on the inferiority of the ACC. You want more proof?
Throws him out. Get those lights off. Intercepted. Rojas still on his feet. Too bright. Turn him off. Rojas. Turn him off. Let's go. Ready? Turn off the lights. Penn State.
Case in point. The narratives about the South handling the North have never been as strong as they are now. SMU got swiftly euthanized by the Fighting Patrinos.
Apologies for the interruption, but what I meant to say was the Fighting Paternos over the Fighting Patrinos. We aren't dogging on Arkansas. Yet.
Drew Aller was far from fantastic in this game, but when Kevin Jennings was just throwing balls in randomly generated directions, you take what you can get. With SMU unable to run the ball, the Horsies very quickly found themselves at the mercy of Penn State's offensive incompetence. There was no more to spare though. We are clearly worthy of the playoffs, so they said. You are clearly worthy of the nosebleeds and nothing more, they also said. This turned into a battle so unwatchable that the FCS playoffs became a better alternative. In a similar format to Indiana, you've had a great year, Horsey. You made it to the Tank Conference title and by extension the playoffs. But this is a whole different beast you're fighting against. Your offense didn't have a double-six wombat to counter with, so your season was over. You'll have an entire offseason to lick your wounds and get Kevin Jennings ready for the next season. Wait. Tyler Van Dyke? Really? The sad thing about all of this is that Penn State still can't beat the overrated narrative because apparently your path is just too easy for the 6th seed, they said. Well, just a useful little factoid of information here. Penn State would beat Alabama by more. One of the many things in bowl season that pissed off Shane Beamer. Despite handing Clemson their 3rd loss of the season, the tomfoolery of the Tank Conference gifted Clemson an appearance in the college football playoffs. They transferred out of said playoffs faster than anything Dabo Swinney has seen in his life. Without the ability to rely on Phil Maffa, Cade Klubnik was the only hope the Taters had. Though the game started out looking like it was going to be much more competitive than anything we've seen before, until the Longhorns remembered that they had the high-end talent and immediately went to work on the Taters. Running, passing, using the 1 play per game threshold for Arch Manning, Texas used every asset to gain a massive lead over Clemson at home. A pick 6, though, turned the tide in Clemson's favor. Oh, never mind. Though the game seemed out of reach by the second half, this didn't stop Cade Klubnik from coming out and balling out harder than he's ever balled out. But in a trademark Wes Godwin moment, Clemson's defense caved, allowing Quinn Ewokes and company to steamroll the Tater defense with minimal issue. With no help around him, the task eventually became too much for Cade and the rest is history. The results were as follows. Clemsoning. And they Clemsoned harder than they've ever Clemsoned before. Partly due to the continuous shortcomings of Wes Godwin, who I'm convinced was reading the back of a Charlie Brown DVD for a playbook. Dabo seemed to agree with this statement, or at least acknowledge its existence, because guess where Godwin is now? The coaching shadow realm. This is a first for Dabo, but there are many firsts with him this year. For example, look, he's finally using the portal for once. It's either sink or swim in this new era of college football, and Dabo finally brought a floaty with him.
The expectation is greater than the appreciation.
For Texas, their next opponent awaits in the form of skibbity or die trying, so best bring a similar run defense to the table. Congratulations, you've fallen directly into the same trap most Tennessee fans fall into. You see the passion of Tennessee fans, hear their confidence and arrogance all week long, slowly convince yourself that what they are saying is true, wait for kickoff, and then watch it all blow up in your face with the potency of a supernova. And then you prepare to make the exact same mistake next season. Welcome to the life of a Tennessee fan. After losing to Michigan, Ryan Day and the coaching staff decided to do what good teams actually do and make significant adjustments to their game plan, which went from test the line up front to get Jeremiah Smith down there somewhere. And to their credit, it worked. To Tennessee and their coaching staff, adjustments are as phantom of a word as championships in the 21st century, so they spent 3 months preparing for more holding calls and bubble screens. The result that followed? It took all of a whopping 5 seconds for death. Sponsored by Fortnite OG. Turns out performing onside kicks on high school teams isn't what prepares you for the big leagues. With Tennessee no longer able to suck off the defense or Dylan Sampson to bail them out of their own shortcomings, Nico trying to carry the game for you went as far as breaking his own helmet in a futile attempt to move the offense forward at some point. But with him was an offensive line that couldn't block, wide receivers that couldn't catch, an offensive coaching staff that couldn't coach, and pretty much a football team that couldn't football. Tennessee fans acting like this result came out of nowhere was the funniest joke of them all, when Tennessee has been doing this virtually all year long on offense, especially considering whenever Tennessee goes on the road, the overall of their team naturally goes down by 15. The only positive to gain from this as of all was that Lane Kiffin's rhetoric about the SEC got instantly thrown back in his face like a boomerang. Tennessee's season comes to a close as Nico will be looking to polish all of his skills with all the receivers he won't have. Ohio State moves on to attempt bitter revenge against the Duckies in the Battle of the Roses. And I get a full season of people on YouTube letting me know about the existence of the hate video I made before this game. Well, I'll see y'all next year when you'll have plenty more opportunities to clown me. And you'll probably have plenty. Welcome to Myrtle Beach, where everyone who came here forgot what they were here for. All the people in attendance showed up in town, but are at the beaches, not the stadium. And a home game, no less. In fairness, Coastal Carolina got the same memo their fans did and refused to spend their holiday season in this stadium. They were in there in body, but not in Christmas spirit. In fairness, Tad Hudson has never seen a football field until this day. But in a battle of two birds, it was like a hawk throwing hands with a hummingbird. Or the hawk just straight up eats the hummingbird. Kirk Cignetti bragging about beating you on game day brought upon more of a curse than initially thought. This game for the Chanticleers was like a football game if the field was on fire, the helmets were on fire, and pretty much everything else was on fire. Basically, it was hell. Owen McCown lit your home up. He had around as many points in the first half as you had opt-outs. UTSA finished off the Teal Birdies in what would be the most successful beach storming in many, many years. Through their efforts, UTSA has collected a new quarterback in the form of Noah Luga from BYU. Meep, meep. As for Coastal, I'm sure you all miss Grayson McCall. The good news is, he misses you too. He joined the squad as an offensive analyst under Tim Beck. You also get Jeremiah Johnson to join the coaching staff. With changes like these and the ever-changing parity of the group of five, it's all but certain one of these teams will be out of a bowl and one will be fighting for a playoff spot in 2025. Fresno State has been gifted with going toe-to-toe on the blue field against one of the greatest transitive property units in college football. Northern Illinois has maintained one of the comedically greatest wins in the 2024 season. Once I saw Fresno State attempt a two-point conversion like this, I knew the game itself was a shitpost or a walk-on bowl. Remember that? The walk-on bowl? Well, take it literally this time. The Fresno State Bulldogs, yes, Bulldogs, were without significant pieces of their team. But Joshua Mandel took to the reign of quarterback just fine. Josh Holst would get his third game on the field as a walk-on freshman and managed to get a bowl game start without utterly embarrassing himself. This is something less common than it should be. Both sides struggled to establish any sort of run game, leading to two quarterbacks with little experience battling it out for the rights of the Great Potato. Notre Dame's father-in-law found themselves down early, but partly due to one of the greatest catches of all time.
Shot miscommunication. How'd he do it? Impossible!
Northern Illinois was able to climb back into the game. This was also due to the fact that Dylan Lynch was as substantial to field goal kickers as KSI is to the music industry. Thus, it was time for our first edition of Bowl Game Overtime. Another prime example of one of the greatest plays in football, the wheel route, is what followed next. My favorite play next to the jet touch pass. Though the Bulldogs would drop first blood, the Huskies would drop back-to-back bombs, forcing Fresno back on the offense.
Low snap. One backside cruncher. Drilled. Ball game. Huskies celebrating like it's South Bend.
Well, that didn't last long. Thanks for showing up, Bulldogs. Yeah, you gave it your all, but hey, it's not all bad. You'll get your revenge sooner than you think, as the Huskies have been rewarded for their season by the eventual transition to the Mountain West. How come Marshall never got this treatment? They beat Notre Dame too. I guess according to playoff logic, both of these teams should have been in because it was a close and fun game to watch. Who knows, maybe the Potato Bowl will one day be a playoff semifinal. It's usually the lowest games on the radar to be the most chaotic. If you thought the previous game was a doozy, get ready to have your head spinning on a swivel for this football lunacy. A fitting game for Christmas Eve. It's one of those games you turn on as an excuse to sit on the couch during Christmas Eve dinner when one of the non-immediate family members brings up politics. Action like this is more than enough to erase any outside noise. With neither team being able to run the ball well, it would have to be another aerial shootout to determine the winner. The Bulls carried with them a lead for a significant portion of the game, but in typical Mountain West fashion, the Spartans were not held back from chaos. They rallied together towards the end of the ball game to take the lead in the fourth quarter. That was until moments left in the game when the Bulls had a chance to tie it with a 41-yard field goal.
The kick is up, it's got the leg, and it is through!
In style. Doinks like that are rare in college football, so that's how you know you're in for a good one. Overtime brought us back-to-back plays for a great first overtime, and a great second overtime, and a great third overtime, and a great fourth overtime. Shouldn't this type of action only be available in the playoffs? End this already!
Plays out. Walker Egan moving to his left, across his body. It's incomplete and it's over!
That took way longer than it should have. Alex Golesh brings back-to-back bowl wins for the Bulls, who are clearly grateful for his arrival. San Jose State, you gave it your best shot. But look, you were part of the longest overtime game in bowl history, so take that with some credit. For now? The Sports Bowl, a precisely fitting name. Despite the name itself though, the matchup here today would feature excitement very rarely seen in this year's postseason. And right before I can cover it, my internet perdues itself. Well, in the meantime, whilst I fix this mess, I shall call upon the right man to take over in my place. Oh, Yenzer!
When we were wee little boys back in October, there were grumblings around Pitt. Were they good? Beating those inbreds from Morgantown in the backyard brawl as always should be. They finally have a quarterback again. I can finally erase all the horrible memories of Keaton Slovis and Phil Yurkovich from my mind. 7-0. It's a cautious optimism from a soft schedule, but still rare optimism for a beaten fan base. Pitting the bed surely won't happen again here. There's no way that they outright implode in humiliating fashion, reinforcing the failures of the school for the last 25 years, right? Right, Pitt? There's a reason why I gave up on them after that Clemson game. Turns out Pitt football's a lot like dairy farmers. They have an insatiable need for Holstein. One of the biggest collapses in school history. And it came to a head against Toledo of all teams. Without a reliable QB, then add a nuclear implosion, you get disaster. Their newest victim of Pat Bostic disease would be David Lynch. The director would have done a better job under center. He had a month until death. Maybe David was just paying homage to his uncanny style by being abstract with the football. Pitt sent him off at halftime to direct a remake of Twin Peaks for Joy and Duggar. He could barely throw the pigskin and it was still a massive upgrade. And the Rockets did everything in their power to hand them the game. Turnovers and failed drives aplenty. Pitt's still unable to break away from a team that went 3 for 16 on third down. Toledo's just Junior Vanderos. They have no running game. Alright, because the Panthers don't have a quarterback that can throw a football. The older you get, the less you're surprised by pitting. You just come to be surprised when it doesn't happen. Like a winning lottery ticket and 1,000 chances, but instead you scratch duds all the way to overtime. And there's no success there. The season once full of hope, and what's their legacy? An airmail check down by Gavin Bartholomew near the goal line. A chance to win the game, and you trust the goddamn tight end. You ask me why I have no faith in this damn program? It's because of shit like this. Losing to Toledo, it's like the lose to a MAC school in September tradition never died. And all the Pitt script gets out of it is 6 overtimes of agony. Another decade of poor man's James Franklin refusing to adjust a damn thing. And I can't even laugh at Penn State for predictably failing either. I made mistakes in choosing my fandom. Why the hell did you make me do this, Squid?
Consider this an extreme rarity for some reason, but this is one of the only times this bowl season that both starting quarterbacks came out to play today. Baffling that this is rarer than the close games we get. We got our wish in both cases though in the Rate Bowl. The guarantee that had been removed is because there was never a guarantee we'd get good football. DJ Giddens skedaddling to the NFL did Kansas State no good in the running back core, but with Dylan Edwards finally getting the spotlight he's been waiting for, he showed up big time for the Wildcats. Despite what was a decent run game, good passing from both quarterbacks was hard to come across, which makes sense considering this is exactly what they did in the regular season. Nonetheless, the Scarlet Knights' fraud allegations began to take a nosedive, as the Rutgers offense was not only keeping up with Edwards, but outperforming him. An Avery Johnson pick helped Athan Krakatoa guide the Scarlet Knights to an ever-increasing lead. In what was a significant turn of events, Krakatoa was actually making great throws and their line of scrimmage was playing as physical as the opposition. Up 31-17 with 6 minutes left to go in the third quarter? How could this ever go wrong?
Krakatoa.
Because Rutgers is Rutgers and there always has to be a perennial embarrassment to the Big Ten. That's why. Greg Schiano continued to make love to the shotgun formation instead of running out the clock, which made his offense stagnate harder than solid steel, opening up the run game for Dylan Edwards some more. The injured-riddled defense that kept them in check in the first half vanished to a complete different plane of existence. And since Rutgers' quarterback room is as luxurious as Kentucky's, also your fault by the way, it led to yet another Schiano no choke job. Sort of a microcosm of their entire season because they started out strong in their season 2 before the inevitable shitfest afterwards. If Krakatoa is the plan for next season, you better get some guys from the portal to make up for it. The Wildcats hope to have their turn again at the Big 12 title next season, but in that conference, it's discriminatory to all its members. 68 different things to do on this day, and you chose to witness the absolute football tomfoolery of this bowl game. Bowling Green has been a headache for quite a few Power 4 squads this season, so to see them here in a bowl is no surprise. What is surprising is that they are in a struggle fest with the brick-by-brick merchant of 5-star hearts, Mr. Lyle Jones himself. Something like that is something nobody can tolerate. So time to fake a punt on 4th and 20. Executed to peak excellence. Despite the deficit they found themselves in, 90-year-old Connor Bazelak would not bow down to the opposition so easily, forcing Butch Jones to make 68 different angry faces on the sideline. These angry faces were seen in full force as Bazelak constantly found the wide receiver but also not one, that being Harold Fannin, who broke the record for receiving yards for a tight end in this ball game. The weight they had to carry was too much for them to hold though, as the defense for Bowling Green as well as the kicking game suffered from a disease that I've just made up called mental opt-out. In what Butch would call complimentary football, Jalen Ranner took advantage of Bowling Brown's defense and went completely ham on them. Bazelak was constantly staring into the ever-fading light that just kept getting further and further away, until it was eventually snuffed out by more defensive aneurysms. Phase 1 of the return of Butch is near completion, as many have praised his job at the Red Wolves. Phase 2 is his return to the SEC at a program desperate enough to hire him. It might end better than his last time, but it'll still be completely priceless comedy nonetheless. Bowling Green might have lost, but at least somebody won this snowball fight. It was probably Fannin again. When Oklahoma fans first heard of the news of the Sooners joining the SEC, I'm sure this is exactly where they envisioned they'd be. I mean, worst case scenario, you're assisting the military by handing their football team some extra morale into next year. It'll give you some time to learn about the future of your main man, Jackson Arnold, and he hit the transfer portal. This is a statement Oklahoma fans have ingrained into their dreams at this point. It's honestly a shock they have anyone left to play here. Thankfully, players like Michael Hawkins and Gavin Sawchuk have stuck around to quickly put to rest this branch of the military. 2 quick scores made it seem as if the Sooners were about to Alabama the midshipmen. But after spoiling Army season, Navy was not satisfied with the blood they have shed. Without Blake Horvath to guide them though, the outcome seemed to be bleak. But Vegas and Sooner fans alike were shitting themselves when Horvath said, "Yes, the Navy," and RKO'd the injury bug back into the ballgame. Though it took them a full half to do it, Brent Venables producing a whole-ass nothing burger on offense ensured that it would be more than enough time for Horvath to supersonic his way 95 yards to the end zone. For anyone that wants to yap about NIL ruining college football, now's a great time to remind you that the Navy spent a whopping goose egg on their NIL yearly, and they're currently beating a team who spent over $10 million. Silence your mouth. With the clock reaching double zeros, the Sooners are finally able to connect some receptions together for the first score since the first quarter. So just as the football gods proclaim for the Armed Forces Bowl, we've got another bowl game over. Oh lord, they're going for 2.
He's in trouble. Navy takes him down.
Just a reminder to the Sooner fans that you've had Ben Arbuckle for a month. Firing him will do you no good. Although I did just hear the sound of somebody pouring gasoline on the Brent Venables hot seat. One of these mishaps in 2025 is all it would take for them to pull the plug. Hell, one of these mishaps is all it would take for you to lease you back to the Big 12 again. I know Kansas State fans are excited at that notion. Navy clinches a 10-win season, joining their rival in the 10 wins or more section. So much so that the national media is now pretending to significantly care about them. My comment section somehow turned a clown video about the SEC into a debate on who won the Civil War, so I dare not say my opinion about starting this rivalry earlier without opening a can of worms in the process. Welcome back to bowl season, Vandy. Some of us missed you. Not Kalen DeBoer, but that's beside the point. Despite that Diego Manziel was in an everlasting war with the NCAA for another year of eligibility, he was determined to finish the year off with the win over their old rival, the North Avenue Nerds, who were just as eager to win as the Commodores were. Well, except Christian Leary, Eric Singleton, Zach Pyron, and a few others. Yeah, you get the point, transfers, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Pavia already has experience beating Tank Conference, so to see him do it again wouldn't be much of a surprise. Points were about as rare as Tank Conference bowl wins in this game, as both offenses struggled to gain any sort of momentum against the defensive fronts. Haynes King and Diego Pavia were doing the heavy lifting for what was the entirety of the game, so the one with the edge would come down to miscues and ref ball. After this very obvious kick-catch interference, Georgia Tech would have some momentum on their next drive.
There is no foul for kick-catch interference.
Oh.
The play was blocked into the receiver. The ball became dead at the 2-yard line.
Oh, and next you'll say, I was only pretending to be brain dead, right? Unfortunately, they weren't. Don't worry, they'd make up for it later by calling a pass interference against you as well. Ref ball doesn't discriminate, but it sure does royally fuck. You know what else can royally fuck you? The weather. One specific drunk Tech fan wanted to have something to celebrate, so he ran onto the field. That's more running than Haynes King did. Though King would fight through the rest of the ballgame, the dark magic of Diego Manziel was just too much for the Jackets to overcome. It's like putting up LeBron James against SpongeBob. You might be good at your game, but your opposition is just too damn powerful. You want to know what the peak of his power looks like? He beat the NCAA. He's a man of the people and deserved an extra year with the Commodores. Auburn can go ahead and save themselves the trouble and get the paddle ready now. Give me Liberty or give me ACC football. Thankfully, we have Liberty. You know what else we have here? That's right, Pig Time! Oklahoma State went winless in the Big 12, but somehow undefeated versus the SEC, and we have you to thank for it. Anyway, rival Texas Tech awaits, and it took no time at all for the field to be pelted with tortilla chips. Following next was the Texas Tech defense being pelted with football destruction from the Piggy offense. In fairness, no defense is a Red Raider tradition, and in a rivalry game, they dare not break it. We are talking about the same guys who let Garrett Green throw for almost 300 yards on them, so there you go. Taylon Green only completed 11 passes and somehow racked up over 300 yards in doing so. Explain to me how you let that one happen. Of course, Tech had their fair share of magic as well, with the pass that the commentators called an interception, an incompletion, and a reception in one catch. Truly one of the calls of all time. Through this game, it was proof that Taven Green was a pretty damn decent quarterback, and everyone around him felt the fruits of his journey, including Tyrell Reed, who had his only catch of the entire season on a 47-yard touchdown. After this point, the Piggies were able to finish off their opposition, all while said opposition rages to the point of intentionally stomping on someone's leg. Yeah, shout out to Fernando Carmona for that smooth brain decision there. Trying to break someone else's leg, all for the worth of your pride. Be thankful you weren't kicked off the team for this one. Though this year was filled with many ups and downs for the Razorbacks, they were able to finally have a successful moment in time and a winning season to go along with it. Sam Pittman will need some of the momentum next season. Texas Tech fans know that their season isn't over yet, as they still have to attend the Peach Bowl to chirp at Texas. So, good luck with all that. This is truly a time to be a Syracuse fan. Not just because they get to see their overperforming team again, but because it's not on the CW this time. They finally escaped the clutches of low TV revenue. Thus are just one of the advantages of being a harbinger of chaos in the ACC. One day Cobb McCord decides to go off, and the very next week Alabama fans are throwing temper tantrums because of your efforts. Speaking of McCord, he was no human in this ballgame. He was a machine of pure destruction and death. 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. Damn, it's like he's playing Mario Cristobal all over again. How do you counter this sort of effort? Try bringing a team of starters next time. Wazoo was depleted of so many players, I thought they were going to get Florida Stated in their bowl. Hell, even Jake Dickard wanted none of that. Well, at least not yet, as he bailed to Wake Forest to take over for Dave Clawson. To their credit, Xavier Eckhouse managed to do a great job as well of carving up the Syracuse defense. But up against one of the hottest offenses in the country, there was little that could be done other than to fight for the sake of competition. McCord took a gambit when deciding to play in his bowl game, and it gave him a major boost in the eyes of draft agents. Not only does McCord get his happy ending for the Orange, but Syracuse practically carries the entirety of Tank Conference on their back in bowl season. We'll see if anyone else can pick up the pace later on down the line. As for Wazoo's coaching situation, they would bring on the great Jimmy Rogers from South Dakota State, former coach of one of the strongest FCS programs today. We'll wait to see what he can bring to the Neo Pac-12 in the future. Now that the Texas 8-4 prophecy has been ultimately fulfilled, A&M is completely on their own going into the Las Vegas Bowl, where if you put any sort of bet on this game, your brain has reached beyond atomic quantum smoothness. Though the Pac-12 has taken some sort of time off, the Pac-12 after dark never actually died. It just manifested itself into Southern California football. No matter how bad Lincoln Riley's teams is record-wise, you are promised a good game. His offense continues to strike record-breaking numbers, while his defense dwells below the basement. He's been on the lookout for his next great quarterback, and his recent track record has been suboptimal at best. Would Jaden Mayava be the next legend under Riley? I don't know. Marcel Reed would be forced to take the reins for the Aggies as Connor Wegman moved 2 feet away to Houston. This results in what we know as the Battle of the Backups, which their performance would be the college football version of Tourette's. Damn, these guys are actually playing some pretty good football. Teddy Melons! Yeah, like that. Mayava couldn't stop himself from throwing dimes to the 8-4 secondary, but that was okay because he was getting the ball right back regardless. These two quarterbacks were like Rock'em Sock'em robots, just basically punching the shit out of each other, waiting for the other one to get decapitated. It was truly the game of all time. It was all the way in the second quarter when one of these sleeping shrimp decided to wake up. A&M quickly summoned decent football through a turnover at the red zone and a little bit more afterwards. The Aggies suddenly blew the hinges off the doors of the USC defense. Baffling. Way to show the Big Ten that SEC pride and live up to our expectations, Mike Elko. I should not have said that. Yep, in no time at all, the Condoms remembered they had actual talent on the team and quickly got back into the game. In fact, they took the lead with 4 minutes left to go. But Marcel Reed wasn't done just yet, as he quickly garnered their own talent and retook the lead on the Condoms. With talent on the defensive front, A&M had USC on their grasp to wrap up the ball game and win the— Oh, come on! Yep, never mind. Faith is something that can only be used as a weapon against the unsuspecting Aggie fan. Here's the guillotine, you fake cadets.
Mayava, looking left, throws a slant. Come on, touchdown!
24-7 lead. Just like how Kyle Ford fell to his knees in the end zone, some 40-year-old A&M fan just fell to his at his colleague's wedding reception. Well, at least they remained true to their tradition, royally pissing away golden opportunities as a certified Texas A&M moment. We'll see you in June when it's time to brag about recruiting again. It's been quite the fascinating season for the Tar Heels, both as a fan and a spectator. Professor Mac Dumbledore, after many years with UNC, finally got sent to the retirement home. They did their coaching search in the same place, as through this they found the NFL's favorite comparison for Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, along with his college-age girlfriend. Ignoring the cringe of this fact, Belichick has already made some significant steps in the right direction in terms of recruiting and coaching hires, including keeping Jeff Collins. But before we talk any more about that, they must be sacrificed to yet another basketball program. Wait, UConn? You've got to be shitting out my ass. Unfortunately, they were not shitting out mine, only the fans of the Tar Heels. It just wasn't a good day to be a Tar Heel when all was said and done. They were already dealing with the injury bug sucking away all of their quarterbacks, but they wanted more blood of the fallen. Jacoby Criswell would once again be bait of their fangs. So much so that he wanted no more of their curse and decided he was done with y'all. The Huskies, like literally everyone else, rated the Tar Heel defense like goblins in Clash of Clans. Ironically, they were just as competitive offensively against every other Tank Conference team they played. Somehow though, North Carolina's whole team was completely outdone by that of Husky talent. Or whatever talent Jim Mora has. Look, you can say your team didn't care about the bowl or whatever, but nonetheless, I can't play down just how humiliating this is for your conference as a whole. My expectations for y'all were in the basement, but they just no-clipped into the back rooms. Take your no convenient timeout policy and head off to the offseason. For in the case of your next coaching search, if you sit in a wheelchair and shit in a plastic pan, you're the next great coach for the Tar Heels. This might actually be the college equivalent of the 0-16 Browns versus the 0-16 Lions. Yes, these two teams have a decent amount of wins, but between the Nebraska winning season superstition and Tank Conference as a whole, I wouldn't be surprised if both teams lost. Thomas Castellanos dipped before the shitfest could even go down, choosing more pain over marginal pain. Sir Grayson James would have to return to the fray against Dylan Raiola. It almost seemed like the thought of both teams losing was a prediction, as neither team managed to put up a single point in the first quarter, and just kept shooting themselves in the foot. But finally entering the second quarter, Ramir Johnson was finally able to do something for the Husker offense. This was one of the only things we'd see as we got about 50 minutes of nothing. Boston College's contribution to the scoreboard was a blocked PAT for a safety. What a CW Network-ass thing to do right there. The second half was pretty much a copy of the first, with neither team doing dick all on offense, but Nebraska getting bailed out by high-end Raiola. Johnson was able to have a great end to the season, capping off his performance as the game's MVP in honor of Miss Johnson. It's been a long road, but the Cornhuskers have finally ended a long overdue drought of bowl game failures and have claimed a winning season for the first time in 8 years. It's moments like these people are glad to have Tank Conference around. Lord almighty, y'all suck. It's taken 2 years, but Sonny Dykes has licked the wounds of the 2023 National Championship disembowelment and has returned to the postseason. Not exactly on the same stage, but you take what you can get as a professional shitposter. I mean, look at your uniforms. That has to go for something. Speaking of postseason performances, your last was clearly still fresh on your mind, as the Horny Toads came out red hot against the Cajun Sparkle. The Raging Cajuns themselves are on a 3-point threshold for the postseason, it seems, as scoring more than that in a given game seems to be an impossible task. TCU, on the other hand, constantly leaped over the Louisiana defense. Josh Hoover's 4 touchdowns, as well as a special cameo of Vanderbilt legend Ken Seals, ensure that this was an easy, dominating performance for the Froggies. The only thing raging was the fans who are down so horrendous that they are considering the return of Billy Napier. In fairness, he wasn't really all that bad there, but it might be time to add that extra L back into the name until he can show up in the postseason. So far, your appearances have been as pointless and consequential as naming your newborn son Diddy. A second thought is recommended. The Horned Frogs end their season on a marginal high note as they await the offseason full of trying to gain some sort of edge in the Big 12. Roll a pair of dice and see where you can end up. Can we take a moment to admire the fact that Miami's most talented team in a long time was so prestigious that they were given the honorary stature of Pop-Tart Bowl appearance? Truly a time in Canes football history. The Miami Tropical Storms have crashed straight into another of their kind, just from the Midwest rather than the state of Florida. Wait, how the fuck is there a tropical storm in fucking Iowa? Questions for later. Look at that amazing mascot! It's edible! Edible! As for the game itself, yeah, that. Despite starting the game with whatever that was, Iowa State and Miami would battle it out in what seemed like an even match. Cam Ward did Cam Ward things to the surprise of nobody who's seen the Cyclone defense. However, Rocco Beck played to his potential and went blow for blow with the Canes offense. In spite of Damian Martinez outrunning the entirety of Iowa State, the Cyclones were not deterred. It seemed as if we were in for a classic finish here on the Pop-Tart. Wait. What do you mean Cam Ward quit? Are you serious? Yep, Cam Ward hit his passing touchdown record and then called it a night at the half. And Mario Cristobal's just let it happen. Decided to throw Emory Williams straight to the Wolves for the second half. Someone call up Antonio Brown, he's got a companion now. Rather than leaving to the locker room though, he stood on the sidelines and watched from some type of cuck chair. Miami's offense at this point was still functional, but nowhere near as productive as with Warden. Supposedly, this whole move was pre-planned to see what the next generation of Canes would bring for the next season. Explain why all the seniors are still in then! Many of those seniors who probably won't see a football field again got left high and dry. But hey, you're supporting Cam Ward's future paycheck. Good job! Basically what Cristobal's told you. I feel bad for you guys and what comes next, as without a high gear offense, yeah, Miami chokes. The Canes defense pulled the Canes defense trademark and fell flat on their face in the final moments of the ball game. Mario Cristobal's most talented team on record, and what does he have to show for it? Pop-Tart runner-up. I hope Cam Ward had to watch Matt Campbell's squad eat the remains of the mascot too. This continues to improve Tank Conference's bowl to a whopping 1-8.
Sucks to be you!
Hold on a sec. Am I reading this correctly? The Snoop Dogg Bowl? Holy shit, it's actually real. This continues to slowly convince me that the Squidtard Bowl is becoming more and more of a future possibility. Oh, for fuck's sake, it's on the CW network! Well, anyway, Miami is still licking their chops after taking a few up the sphincter from Ohio. Not state, just Ohio. But with a little more football experience recently from their adversary, they appeared to have a little bit more of a hot streak coming from it. Both offenses kept burning their own hands and trying to cook something. Nobody could get any sort of momentum in the ball game, but it was the Red Hawks' missionary to get some sort of win in December. They would feast on their last meal of 2024. Through Brett Gabbert dropping the ball like it's hot to Kevin Davis, he became the Rams' dogfather. An immaculate 150-yard run game was just mandatory business for him. He set ablaze the Colorado State secondary, leaving behind nothing but bones. Miami of Ohio was reincarnated as a non-limit top dog. Hey, at least one Miami team can win in the postseason. Congratulations on the win for the Red Hawks. You must be feeling awfully high. Go bowling. Sounds like a consequence of failure more than an achievement for NC State. The expectations they had in 2024 flopped from the get-go, and State fans couldn't be any more fed up with Dave Doran. They struggled through North and Western Carolina, so might as well try and complete the Carolina World Tour by beating up on the ones from the East. With KC Conception hitting the portal, your top offensive production has hit the realm of gone, so CJ Bailey would have to rally whoever is left in an attempt to remedy the season they've had. And here we go again. Of course they couldn't show up in their bowl. Their conference is proud of their efforts so far. One pack, one goal. The goal being to piss off all of your fans in one fell swoop. Rajai Harris threaded through your defense like Swiss cheese, and there wasn't shit you could do about it to stop it. Well, except for actually bringing an offense to the table. It took all the way up until the final quarter, but NC State remembered that they had some little semblance of talent left on the field. And they actually used it. I know! Crazy! Baffling even! Bailey was making good throws, the defensive backfield was smothering the Pirate line. It took all of the bowl season, but through their efforts, NC State has finally shown what the ACC is all about. Yeah, we all knew how that was gonna end. Enough stallouts on offense and you've pretty much set yourself up for that one. It's actually impressive how the conference keeps finding ways to royally screw up in critical moments. Well, at least this time, they took some notes from their opposition, and someone finally paid for it. Retroactively speaking, this doesn't really satisfy a fan base who hasn't seen a bowl win in 8 seasons, but hey, you take what you can get. And as a fan of the nutsack, you take what you can get. Alright, I'm gonna admit, this was quite the shocker. No, not the fact that 2 teams from the same conference are playing in a bowl game. That is a little odd in itself, but sets up as a definitive way to determine 3rd place in the Big 12. What was shocking for me was in the result of said matchup. With both Heisman winner Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders opting in for this matchup, it was determined by most, especially the media outlets with their mouths still inside Deion's crack, that the Buffaloes would roll over the Mormons with minimal effort. However, they were blown away from the word go. BYU's offense wasn't monstrous by any means, with Jake Retzoff only completing over half of his throws, but something was definitely off with the Buffs' offense. Shedeur struggled under the pressure of the O-line, and while Hunter definitely wasn't boxed up, the offensive production as a whole was significantly lesser than previous games. Frauds? Not sure, but something went AWOL for Colorado in this ballgame. The Mormon Church quickly put an end to the celebrity show in Boulder. Somehow, this wasn't the worst thing to happen to Travis Hunter this month, as, yeah, that happened also. And while it wasn't the ending they were looking for, give credit to where it's due for Sanders and Hunter for sticking through for the whole game and beyond. This goes for Deion too, because so far, he's proved my ass wrong and is actually sticking around in Boulder. Well, for now. The Cougars end their season on a major high note with yet again more talk about shoulda, coulda, woulda playoff team. Beat Kansas next time, and maybe we wouldn't have a problem here. Army season was filled with a massive episode of ups and 2 significant downward spirals between the blowout against Notre Dame and the no-show against the mid-men of Navy. They'll have a chance to redeem their season in a battle of 2 conference champions. As for Marshall, hello? Marshall, this is your cue. Hello? Okie dokie, well, so much for saying they didn't lose much in the portal. They done got Colorado'd. Quick, someone bring a team back from the dead! From the depths of bowl ineligibility, Louisiana Tech has been revived to participate in the Independence Bowl. And that's about all they did. Being a sacrificial lamb to that of the triple option is a more accurate description. Army's offense quite literally ran through the defense for more than 300 yards on the ground. Passing was inadequate only because it's a foreign concept to the Black Knights. Bryson Daly proved himself in the field as a true elite running back. Louisiana Tech never really stood a chance, as this was always meant to be the victory lap for Army, and there wasn't anyone who could stop it. Although, this will give some time for returning coaching hire Tony Franklin to go back to the drawing board for next season. Army and Navy both clutch what are going to be phenomenal seasons for them. Whether or not we see it again, it sure was fun to see. Does this now mean it's Air Force's turn? Y'all remember that one time Iowa showed up in the postseason? No? Good. Nobody does. They show up about as well as the transparent Titans logo in the Music City Bowl end zone. This bowl game is basically the Kadarius Toney of painted fields. This, ironically, is actually one of Iowa's better performances we've seen from the Hawk Tuas in the postseason. Iowa's offense brought the usual over-reliance on the running backs and tight ends as they do. Nobody else in the SEC can beat the Big Ten, so might as well give Eli Drinkwitz a shot as well. With Luther Burden out for Mizzou, Brady Cook would be down his best offensive weapon on the field. The ripple effect was certainly felt, as Cook failed to throw for much better than half of his throws. While Iowa didn't have a great performance either, this game was proof that Brendan Sullivan is leagues and bounds ahead of whatever pile of liquid ass they throw out on the field before his quarterback. And this is with only their third string running back in the pocket. This game was also a lesson that whenever a player is out of bounds or sliding down, that means don't hit him. Apparently these teams failed to learn that lesson. The Hawk Tuas grabbed a lead early and managed to maintain it through most of the game, but as Iowa does, they refused to play a full game of offense. 3 quarters was enough for them, and 3 and out is a term that Kirk Ferentz is all too familiar with anyway. Mizzou very quickly took the opportunity to get the jump on them. They also got the jump on the whole kicker you allegations, as Blake Craig nailed a 56-yarder as if it were a Tuesday. Oh wait, before we show you Iowa's last play of the game, let me introduce you to a compilation of Iowa's best moments of offense this season. Thanks for watching.
Sullivan's going to try to sneak it himself. No! Hit twice! Corey Flagg was all over him.
Better be careful, Ferentz. One of these days, North Carolina is probably going to try and recruit you. I'm going to ask you all this again, and I think you have to agree with me this time. Do you believe in karma? I'm certain you do now. It's a bitch for some and a blessing for others. The moment SMU got into the playoffs, Alabama fans and administration alike have done nothing but cry and complain about bias against them, strength of schedule, SMU's conference, NASCAR, and the fact their cousin is dating someone else. They've become the exact thing they swore to destroy from the season before. It seems to have ended with a similar result too. Instant collapse. And I do mean instant. Multiple turnovers in the red zone off the bat to give Michigan a big lead, when their passing game is as valuable to today's football as an expired box of Fruit Loops. Their offense as a whole is like Army's pet goldfish, but when the opposition is quite literally exploding in real time, it's hard not to take advantage of it. But it's fine, we've come back from deficits like this before, like against Oklahoma. To think that Alabama would be reduced to whatever the hell this is, we've never seen anything like this. Except for the Oklahoma game, and the Tennessee game, and the Vanderbilt game. You guys just fucking suck now. Hypothetically, if you didn't blow up and die in the first quarter, you wouldn't be down going into the final moment of the game.
Milroe in the pocket. Flush left. Milroe heaves it up. Incomplete. He had a man, Rico Scott.
Here's you another one. Hypothetically, if Milroe completes that pass, you could have won this game. We already know that Alabama and Kalen DeBozo win this game every time on another neutral field. Except today, and in the national championship last year, and in the Rose Bowl before that. But every other time, hypothetically, Alabama and Kalen DeBoer win. How the mighty have freaking fallen. You were credited for your strength of schedule. Why do you think you were ranked so high in the first place? But you don't get to no-show for weeks on end and think you're still playoff worthy. You aren't. You can non-hypothetically eat my Tartarian balls. Michigan ended the crybaby routine, but in their quest for retribution, might have awoken a sleeping giant that's currently on a manhunt in the playoffs. Eye for an eye, I suppose. High tide!
Alabama!
Not again, man. Another ACC team in the playoffs, another high chance of football IBS from the Tank Conference. To top it all off, we have to listen to Gary Danielson talk about it. Louisville has already lost a fair abundance of players to the draft and portal, including Ja'Cory Brooks and Tyler Shuck. Which means that they'll be sending out Harrison Bailey, hey, remember that guy, out on the field. Will Rogers has made it fully clear that he intends on being there with his team for this matchup, which means that he'll be the starter, right? Wrong! Jed Fish has decided that Rogers' time is up, so true freshman Desmond Williams will take over for him in the Sun Bowl. He started his time in this game with an elite touchdown pass to Louisville. But hey, after doing that, he actually played to his potential. The Cardinal defense was in agonizing pain trying to shut down his passing game. Such a case was the same scenario for Bailey against the Husky defense. They're fucking terrible. Several blown coverages and tackling like the receivers are made of butter tells me a lot about what to look forward to in 2025. Nonetheless, the quality of this game and the competition it brought to the table made everyone forget about how cheeks both of these defenses were, because it was good football, and that wasn't easy to come across this bowl season. Just when it looked like Louisville had a comforting lead, Williams made some more magic happen, coming back from 2 scores down, with a little hint of ref ball too. After the tying score, we all knew what it was time for. Another edition of Over. Fight! Yeah, you knew this was coming, don't lie.
A 2-point conversion. Williams throws same spot. Broken up by Louisville.
Choosing to go for 2 while having 7 failed goal line attempts all on the same drive seems like a no-no. I respect the aggressiveness, but what the hell was that? Let this be a lesson to find an offensive line, and you've got yourself an offense worthy of the Big Ten. Jeff Brom's inconsistency undid his team this year, but some more portal pieces and things might line up in the right direction. Well, looky there. Merry January. Well, if the playoff outcry coming from the Incest College or from Eli Kiffin wasn't enough, it was coming from that of the Fighting Cocks of South Carolina too. Left out for an all too similar reason to that of the other two. They felt they deserved a chance, especially since one of the teams they beat at the end of the season got into the playoffs. But life ain't fair, and you're about to find out the hard way. Through your SEC tear in the latter half of the season, you forgot, like many this season, that the SEC is not the best conference in football this year. That would be the Big Ten. supported by that of 9-win Burt Bielema and the Fighting Illini. South Carolina was quickly met with an impenetrable wall on the defensive front. Despite this, Lenore Sellers proved why he is a Heisman finalist favorite going into 2025, as he still managed to have a decent day on offense. But with no Rocket Sanders in the pocket to run the ball, they became just a little one-dimensional. Such was not the case with the Fighting Illini. Nearly 200 rushing yards in critical moments of the game, even ref ball ran rampant through the game, mixing with Burt Bielema doing a little trolling, which caused Shane Beamer to become just slightly unhinged. By slightly, I mean crash the f*** out. Dude was ready to throw down WWE style, or at least made it seem like he was. But I don't know if he wants some of what Burt is cooking. That man will tear you a new hole and then some. Following the Beamer breakdown, the offense has traded some more blows back and forth. The Carolina defense broke at the most critical moment of the game, so now it was make it or break it for Sellers. 4th and 4 with playoff narratives on the line. How do you respond?
Sellers gonna pass. Incomplete in the end zone. And Illinois takes over on downs.
And a fuck you shall shut. If you couldn't even manage to score on Illinois' defense with 4 attempts at the goal line, you definitely wouldn't have done it against any of the playoff teams. Try that on Brian Kelly next season, and maybe you will be a playoff team next year. The Fighting Illini finished off the 10-win season in one of the best years in memory of the younger generation. Both of these teams are filled with young talent, so expect possibly more of the same next year. Maybe both coaches will meet again in a wrestling match or something. LSU facing off against one of the few coaches on the 2019 staff to help them make it to the promised land. Dave Aranda reunites with his former school in the form of the enemy. Both teams would keep on board most of their significant pieces of the team awaiting this bowl game. Surprising that anyone is on board to play for this dancing buffoon Brian Kelly. As common with LSU, they feel a lot like Ohio State this year, at least the light version. They piss themselves in the regular season, and then once all risks are taken away, they come out and play like playoff contenders. Or at least their offense does. You think that defense is showing up? No! As we all know, 450 yards for any quarterback against this defense is any given day of the week. Once I saw Sawyer Robinson throw a pick 6, I knew it was a lost cause. Their time on the field is as long as the TikTok ban. Ironic considering that Aranda is supposed to be a defensive mind. If you're vindicating anything that comes out of Brian Kelly's mouth, you're doing it wrong. But that's exactly what you did. Said killer instinct he talks about is Jess Nussmeier flinging it to Aaron Anderson and Chris Hilton and watching them talent fee another huge catch. No career high stat could undo that embarrassment. A rough end to the Bears season, but Dave Aranda well rose above expectations, so expect him to be ready for next year. LSU fans get to repeat the old cycle that they always do. Off-season hype, die in the regular season against high-ranked teams, blow out some unranked team in a bowl game, convince yourself next year's the year, rinse and repeat. And under the big game Burger King system, you fall hook, line, and sinker every time. Well, at least you'll get some guys in the draft yearly. On to more playoff games!
I'm here with my family!
This isn't just the Fiesta Bowl. This is the super duper Fiesta Bowl. These two teams own this bowl like it owes them money. Penn State has finally managed to win against a highly ranked opponent, but the run is far from over, as now what awaits them in Arizona is nothing other than Genty ball or die trying. Being their Group of 5 champions, Boise State has been able to live through the regular season on easy mode. Unfortunately for them, Genty ball has finally met his maker. It's what happens when A-Train tries to throw hands with Goku. Speed blitzing wasn't an option, man ball wasn't an option, the only choice left was for Boise to send the game to Maddox the Madman. But without the Pandora's box of Genty ball, everyone knew that the fog was coming for the Blue Horsies. James Franklin is fresh off the blood of one Horsey, and that's just not enough. Turnovers, flop drives, actually letting Drew Aller throw, it was a losing scenario where Boise was simply outclassed by the talent fee. Tyler Warren just being there outclasses about 70% of Boise's talent composite. You even allowed Franklin to say the unholy phrase, complimentary football. The line of scrimmage was property of the Penn State defensive front that Genty ball had to pay rent to even get a yard on. The greatest stab in the gut for Genty ball fans was that he was just a whopping 27 yards short of beating Barry Sanders' single-season NCAA record. It was a David versus Goliath storyline, and there was no happy ending this time. The Nittany Lions moved to the Orange Bowl in an attempt to play the national championship. James Franklin is so close to beating the fraud allegations, he can taste it. And it tastes like a double 6 Wombat. Boise, you've done a great job this year of repping the group of 5, but a run like the one you wanted was just too much for a Cinderella. On the bright side, the Pac-12 isn't far away, so more playoff appearances are possibly in store. With Genty Ball being snuffed out by Penn State, the only remnant of the Cinderellas falls to the great and holy Cam Skibbity and the Arizona State Sun Devils. Winning the Big 12, they were awarded with a bye week and now get to test their luck against the Fighting Horns down. Like a tape recorder, I'm here to tell you about a very similar result to the last game. Cam Skibbity struggled to establish his usual run game as the Texas defensive line did exactly what they do in most cases and locked down the run game. Quinn Ewok did as he does, a suboptimal passing game with a lock on Matthew Golden to talent feed their way out of every hole in their drives. In some cases, it worked. The Arizona State defense wasn't letting the Longhorns do what they wanted, but Sam Leavitt wasn't able to find anyone anywhere. So it looked like we were in for yet another episode of blowout in favor of the high-end talent feed. However, like good teams do, they made adjustments in the second half. Sorry, I'm a Vol, that's a foreign word. Arizona State was gifted early in the third with the safety to gift them a little momentum. As the game continued, the Sun Devils used Skibbity Ball to slowly chip away at the deficit they were stuck in. They kept using Skibbity Ball in the most unexpected of ways, such as having him be the best quarterback on the field. And yes, he was. Just like that, it was a one-score game. Quinn Ewok made sure to ensure Arizona State that Sparky had light. Moments later, Texas found themselves from "this game is over" all the way to tie ball game. While Arizona State could have ended the ball game, on a targeting no call, ref ball made their point very clear that they wanted overtime. Texas, though, with a minute left, managed to climb their way into field goal range, where Burt Auburn attempted the field goal to win it. But his last name is Auburn, so yeah, no happiness allowed. Wait a minute, is this reality? Is Arizona State and Cam Skibbity really about to pull off the upset of the century and win a playoff game? Up by a touchdown? A loss on 3rd and 10? They're actually going to pull this one off! They're gonna do it, everybody! They're gonna freaking do it! All hail Cam Skibbity! What the hell? A double safety blitz on 4th and 13? What the fuck are you doing? You blew the game on the most critical moment of the ball game! Why in the world would you blitz on a 4th and 13, you bumbling morons? No! Of course Texas scores instantly in second overtime. They just got resurrected like it was Easter Sunday. No wonder Cinderellas can't do shit in the playoffs. You quite literally earned this.
3rd and 8. Leavitt. That ball's intercepted! It is intercepted!
Despite what's going to be known as a coaching aneurysm from this point onwards, this was still a phenomenal year for what was thought to be a bottom feeder of the Big 12. Kenny Dillingham has put himself on the map, and hopefully he'll stick there. Texas will face off against what I think might be the true Goliath of the playoffs. Speaking of which, it's never easy to beat a good team twice. It's also not easy to get your back blown out by the same team you beat. But new experiences for everyone. Oregon won the Big Ten in their first season of being there, only for Ohio State to quite literally bust your brains in and say, "My conference now." I get it's personal for them, but what the shit? This isn't just a blowout, this is a disfigurement only seen in Legos before now. Ryan Day and his staff made Dan Lanning step on said Legos whilst destroying him entirely. Jeremiah Smith lit the secondary up like a bonfire after the final day of high school. Tosh Lapoi's defense got exposed and then some. I've seen better performances from a former Jaguar and their Urban Meyer squads. Will Howard, Travion Henderson, Jack Sawyer, everyone on the Buckeyes was playing at peak performance as if they all had the max stat and stamina upgrades. This was a duck hunting the ferocity of which would make Uncle Cy jealous. I thought Tennessee just sucked, but clearly there is far more at play than previously thought. Chip Kelly's offense is working to perfection, and if they continue to play at this level, I don't know if there's anyone that's going to come close to stopping it. Another year, another choke, huh, Duckies? The fateful day of which you win a natty might never come. Maybe it will one day. But holy shit, how do you keep blowing it? You were always a fraud, maybe? It was a lack of preparation, maybe? Don't say the Nuts are better than you, because how'd you win the first time? One thing's for certain, though. At least your team logo continues to tell us your national title count. one of the longest running gags in football, and it may never die.
The Oregon Ducks are going to win a national championship!
I'm sure even Georgia fans are a little confused on how they managed to win the SEC. They went through some serious blood, sweat, and tears to get there, and a lot of their blood was shed to the quarterback depth chart, as Carson Beck has been ruled unable to play for the remainder of the run. Gunnar Stockton would have to continue his momentum from the SEC championship in order to win. Unfortunately for him and Georgia's offense as a whole, Notre Dame's defensive line only grows stronger by the day. Points are near impossible to come by in this ballgame, but combine this with the usual self-inflicted wounds from the Bulldog offense, and you've got the usual UGA offensive clinic. Georgia's wide receiver core is full of a bunch of running backs because they sure can separate, but can't catch a damn cold. Riley Leonard struggled as well against the Georgia defensive line, but the Dogs allowed for several key plays, including a kick return touchdown to open up the second half. Kirby Smart couldn't do more than pray that his tight ends would do something to give Georgia a fighting chance. His actual receivers are 504 Gateway. Just when Kirby thought Georgia could come back, Marcus Freeman pulled a fast one on the Dogs by subbing his entire team on 4th and 1. A gutsy move, but balls are key to winning big games. The rest of the testosterone on the day went straight to Riley Leonard, ensuring that Mickey Mouse would be sent back to the clubhouse. Hold on a second, I have something stuck in my throat. I gotta get it out real quick.
Yeah! Eat my balls, you dirty mutts! Let's go! Thank you, touchdown Jesus!
Anyway, the luck of the Irish should be sent off to the Orange Bowl with the battle against James Franklin confirmed. I guess we now have proof that the 5 through 8 seeds are the place to be if you want a championship. Either that, or just don't win your conference. That part comes natural for touchdown Jesus. Georgia's season ends with quite the surprise for everyone. Carson Beck, who was thought to be done with college, decided he wanted one last stab as a college quarterback. At Miami. The jokes write themselves at this point, no reason to laugh any further. It's hard to find anything that aged like spoiled milk more than Lane Kiffin's different league comments about the SEC. All the SEC has done in bowl season so far is humiliate themselves and by proxy, Lane Kiffin's dumbass rhetoric. One thing you have to give him credit for is that despite most other teams making him look like a moron, he actually got the memo that he was supposed to show up and his team made sure to mimic the same move. Either that or tank conference is just that fucking terrible. Granted, Duke did find themselves down a quarterback with Malik Murphy hightailing it out of there. On top of the fact that the Manny Diaz secondary is just free real estate for Jackson Dart, there wasn't much of a chance of survival for the Blue Devils. Dart not only had a great day, he had his magnum opus. He dismantled whatever was left of the secondary. He went near mistakeless even. Chances are he made a few million more dollars in the NFL from this game alone. Unlike Cam Ward, he didn't quit after one half to the chagrin of the Duke defense. Henry Beline IV would have to attempt to mend the blowout by throwing up a few decent passes. But there wasn't much for him to show. It made me understand a whole lot more as to why they burned so much cash to get Daria Mensah. But this was no competition. It was a scrimmage that Ole Miss took great advantage of. Dart's final throw was that of a 69-yard touchdown. Nice. Going out with style. And before you say it, let this year's shortage of playoff status be a reminder to beat Kentucky at home. They only had one SEC win on season and it was you. I don't want to hear shit ass until you can do that, Kiffin. Now stay out of Sidney Thomas's DMs. As mentioned earlier, the best games during bowl season are usually the lowest ones on the radar. The battle for 5th place in the state of Texas is certainly no exception. The Mean Green struggled immensely to do much of anything in the second half of their season, and to make matters all the worse, Chandler Morris, the ringleader, skedaddled to tank conference. Drew Messmaker would have to take over in the meantime, and probably next year too, and he sure did make a mess today. Texas State had their fair share of ups and downs, but this is the same team that took Cam Skibbity down to the wire, so they're no slouch. Jordan McLeod burned the secondary with 300 yards on the night, with catches of which you thought you could only see at the Power 4 level. Their offense seemed to be too much for the Mean Green to handle, but every time they nearly put the game out of reach, they'd fold and vomit right away. Just like this poor Mean Green defender currently hurling his Mean Green guts out in the poor trash can. Eventually, North Texas would take advantage of one of the opportunities given to them by scoring late in the ballgame. But Lincoln Perry went hypersonic at the most critical moment of the ballgame to once again make it a 2-score game and seal the deal. They tried an abundance of times to sell, but to be fair to them, it's the Texas way to do so. Since both schools are from the state, someone had to fold. Better luck next time, Mean Green. 10 years and counting, but a bowl win will come one day. The Bobcats continue to improve as a program, and they could potentially be set up for Big 12 recruitment if this keeps up. Please go to the Big 12, that'd be so funny. You've waited all bowl season for this one. 40 bowls and counting, and after all of the slop the postseason has presented, we finally made it to the Duke's Mayo Bowl, the true symbol of college football, where one of these coaches will get the honors of the Mayo Dump. PJ Fleck hit his 7-5 threshold for the year, so they are no longer held back by superstitions. Virginia Tech doesn't live in the same luxury, though they aren't held back by superstition unless you believe the injury bug is one in of itself. Kyron Drones has once again found himself a victim. Knowing what awaits in the depth chart behind him, the offense as a whole for the Hokies becomes optional, especially when the run game has become suboptimal at best. Like being on a plane full of Swifties, the next 3.5 hours became a horror episode for the Hokie faithful. Though Tech had the first score of the night, the next 3 quarters would be spent with the Golden Gophers kicking the shit out of those turkey balls. Max Brosmer did just as much as he needed to take care of business against the opposition. One highlight to take into the offseason for Tech was the nailing of this 60-yard long field goal. Duke's Mayo never lets us down. As for the rest of the game, the conservative play calling for Tech was ultimately the straw that broke the Turkeys' back. Minnesota's antidote of freedom has freed you from the depths of the 2024 season. It'll take as long to get this foul taste out of your mouth as it will for these poor commentators to get the taste of this banana mayo sandwich out of theirs. So, a full off-season's worth. As Virginia Tech was the final ACC team to play, Tank Conference has extended their bowl run to an incredible... Gotta give you like a standing ovation for that one. The jokes really do write themselves. Gagging all the way into August of 2025. PJ Fleck also got a Mayo bath. To end the bowl mania, we head over to the Bahamas, where Buffalo and the Flames of Liberty await the send-off for bowl season. Kadon Salter has done a phenomenal job with the Flames for the past few seasons, so with the time he has left, how will he use it? By doing the cool thing, of course. Off to the portal he goes. It was at this point the Flames realized they were in danger. While Buffalo didn't produce any record-breaking stats, their 200 rushing yards are more than enough to ripple away any hopes and dreams of the Flames. Liberty's offense made it seem death was the better alternative. I've seen better passing games than the triple option. Hell, my fucking beer belly is more sightly than this pile of AIDS you call an offense. Granted, since this was a glorified scrimmage for the up-and-coming quarterbacks, it's not like anybody expected any sort of elite passing game. But if these guys are fully incapable of completing passes, you might be better off looking for our Cam Skibbity in the portal. Kicker for Buffalo, Upton Belafan, contributed more to their offense than yours contributed all game long. The Bulls cap off a 9-4 season, which is a massive improvement over the previous. Keep this up, and there might be a certain Tank Conference looking for your resume. Now over to the playoffs. I'm sure you both know the stakes here. Everything's on the line. One team has never seen a field this big since 1988, and the other one isn't far much better. Both are prone to collapse in the big league games. Only one of you can make it to the big dance at the end of the rainbow. In a game of pure physicality, Penn State's defensive line fought to the end against the Notre Dame running game. Jeremiah Love was completely shut down with no momentum in his direction the entire night. However, the Irish are used to this position as the Dogs did a similar move to them. Riley Leonard would use every talent fee in his disposal to man-ball his way for yardage. While Drew Aller didn't have the same sort of weaponry, what he did have was Tyler Warren, Singleton, Allen, and Tyler Warren again. As is usual for Penn State, the Fighting Paterno offense was never able to get past second gear. If it wasn't a stall out from running in the same direction 3 times, it was Drew Aller throwing into quintessential quintuple coverage for some reason. While their defense held Notre Dame to 3 at the half, the luck of the Irish finally had some momentum once the second half hit. Love finally got some positive yardage, and Jaden Greathouse found a home in the Nittany Lions secondary. Though some push from Penn State's offense with the exception of all their receivers, Penn State quickly tied the ballgame up. Leonard would respond by letting them have another drive. Good job. Aller would respond by letting them have another drive. Good job. Oh, never mind. Penn State takes the lead off of ref ball interference. No amount of bottle throwing will save you from their tomfoolery. You know what can, though? The Great House. Great House. In the middle of the secondary. With the ball game tied, the next few minutes would be spent with both sides doing nothing at all except watching the clock go down to 0. That was up until Drew Aller had a plan.
As long as 49. Aller hit as he throws.
The plan of which was to sell harder than anyone has ever sold before. Your receivers have yet to catch a ball, but now is when you want to play aggressive? Smart move, Einstein. Your odds in overtime were infinitely better than anything you had planned on that drive. Now observe as the abysmal record Franklin has against top 10 teams somehow gets improved even fucking further.
Snap and hold are good. The kick is good!
Leave it up to Franklin to be the one to finally break the chain of Notre Dame's failures in big games. Either that or Brian Kelly. Refs don't throw interceptions in the final minutes of the game though, so you can shut the hell up about that. You got beat by a team who had more grit and game planning than you did. It's as simple as that. You can accept it and move into the next season, or cry about it and be forced to move on. But reality has it that no matter what, you'll be doing the same shit again next year, because you have James Franklin. Welcome to hell. Does Shamus know ball, by the way, or is that just the luck of the Irish? SEC versus Big Ten. The final remnant standing of each of the top conferences faces off in a battle of the Goliaths. Texas grabbed victory from the clutches of defeat, whilst the Buckeyes have been speedrunning to the crown. More specifically, Jeremiah Smith has been the cheat code that helped the tool-assisted run. However, it seems that the Longhorn defense has finally cracked the code. Rather than having everyone spread out, Texas took a massive focus on locking Jeremiah Smith down, and it paid off. Ohio State's offense looked more reminiscent of its battles in the Big Ten than it did the last 2 games it played. Because the ace factor was locked down, the Nuts had to look towards other weapons to compromise. It was all too clear their offense was not moving in full gear, and thus it struggled. Texas' offense has never moved in full gear, like ever, but Quinn Ewokes was able to do enough to keep the Fighting Horns Downs in motion. While points were easy to come by in this ballgame, it ensured a great match between 2 of the massive heavyweights of this season. Ohio State got first blood, but Texas, with some ref ball interference, was able to tie at the half. Or so they thought. Travion Henderson in the flat was able to work some magic in the final moments of the half to keep Ohio State's lead intact. First downs in a row on the same drive were near impossible to come by, but Ewokes was able to find Jaden Blue for his second touchdown to tie the ballgame back up. In make it or break it time, Will Howard used every move in his arsenal to get the Nuts back down the field, including running like Peyton Manning. It was clear that both offenses, just like the previous semifinal, were beginning to heat up, but Texas would need to tie the ball game to keep their hopes alive. Thankfully, some more catches and ref ball later, the Longhorns are 1 yard away from doing so. Sounds like a perfect time to do something stupid, like a toss 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage for a loss of even more than. Forget the man ball at the 1 yard line, that's a stupid idea. You know what else is stupid? You guessed it. The idea that Texas is back.
Pressure comes. Sawyer knocked it out. Picks it up. Longhorn Nation, we're back. Scoop and score and dagger from 82 yards.
You might as well be in different leagues, not conferences, different leagues. You know, like here's the NFL, here's the SEC, here's those few Big Ten teams, and then here's everybody else.
You can't script this. Roommates. When yours was at Ohio State.
Well, that's it, everybody. Many games have been played over the course of 6 months, but now the big stage has finally been set. Only 2 teams remain for the prize of the right to college football immortality, and it all lies on one final game. Oh, whoops, my bad. Hold on, let me fix that. Here we are, the final trial. Only one of these teams can hoist the trophy. The other one hoists the honors of being clowned for an entire season to take the shade off of all the other bums who couldn't make it here. Ohio State's $20 million roster against Notre Dame, who's garnered enough money from these playoff wins to buy said roster along with the entirety of Kennesaw State University. Ohio State's bloodlust would undergo a state of preemptive shock, as the Irish would be the first of the 2 to strike the scoreboard, living off of the most military academy-ass offense you've ever seen. Hell, theirs is more interesting because the offense Mike Denbrock initiated was the quarterback draw. That's it. No Jeremiah Love, no Jaden Greathouse, no Chris Mitchell either. It was Riley Leonard on the quarterback draw and hope to God the Buckeye defensive line budges. It did budge on the first drive, which leached an entire quarter and gave Notre Dame the lead. But once the Buckeyes recognized this pattern, they adapted to it immediately. It's like trying a redemption arc for Eric Cartman. It works for one episode, then immediately dries up. Marcus Freeman was too scared to let Riley Leonard attempt to pass, so they stuck with it. A fearful move which the nuts smelled. And they pounced. The Irish defense did a decent job keeping Jeremiah Smith in check, but the Buckeyes wanted to mock you on the way to the grave. Will runs like a 40-year-old Howard was sent through the defensive line. It also worked. Unlike the Irish though, he could actually pass the ball. With more talent on one of their receivers than Boise State's entire team, guys like Emeka Egbuka and Travion Henderson exploited various weak spots in the Irish secondary. They couldn't cover all the fronts for the entire game. They found themselves down by halftime 21-7. But Ohio State doesn't let up. They never do. They are a force of which hasn't been stopped since Michigan tried to plant the flag in Columbus. The Irish's response would go as follows. A fake punt in their own field position with an abundance of time left on the clock. At this point, you'd be better off sending Lou Holtz out there. He's given Ryan Day more headaches than any of y'all have. This shit's over, man. Another natty, another blowout. With too little too late time left, the Irish thought of something that nobody else has ever thought of before. Passing the football. It actually did something, granted, as Jaden Greathouse once again garnered the clutch bone and the Irish actually used the shovel pass correctly on a 2-point conversion. See what happens when you don't use it on 3rd and long, Tennessee? A great strike, but time is not on your side. With no choice left, the Irish whipped out every trick in the book, which is really just them actually throwing the football. If all else fails, throw balls in coverage baiting for pass interference calls. Eventually, they'd get down the field and kick a field goal down by 2 touchdowns with less than 10 minutes left? What are you doing?
And
Freeman, you fool!
Unsuccessful.
Yeah, you had that one coming, Freeman. Don't act shocked. You're in the biggest game of your life. Why are you getting conservative now? Because of that aneurysm, you suffered a time penalty of half the clock. You'll need to be perfect to get your comeback now. Either that or the hands of a certain clutch bone.
Pressure, Leonard launching. Great house. Magic catch. Touchdown, Notre Dame.
Activated at the perfect time. Jaden Greathouse has become the very thing you've destroyed. He's your Tyler Warren. Now this is it. You've relied on the defensive protection all night long. But through one last stand, you'll have a final chance to score. But that's if you could stop one of the hottest offenses in the country. First down, success. Second down, success. Third down,
heavy pressure, Howard delivers downfield, and Smith, and he's got it! Jeremiah Smith!
A word of which you've heard for the last 36 years. Failure. Ohio State clinched the title on a Jeremiah Smith breakaway catch. Is this the part where I pretend to be shocked? Knowing that we have to deal with this guy for the bare minimum for the next 2 years is alarming for the rest of college football. Jeff Sims could be in the pocket and it'll still be a breakout game for Devontae Smith II. You were close, Irish. Real close. But Rudy will have to stay offside for yet another year. But one thing is for certain, Brian Kelly can't coach. Reality was here that Ohio State is the best team, with the most talented roster and a great coaching staff to go along with it. Not a great golf cart driver, but hey, any day is a good day for upgrades. The Ohio State Buckeyes claim the crown, and Ryan Day's chains have finally been set free. His contract stays afloat too. With a lot of the same talent coming back next year, you'll be the team to beat next season. So best watch your back, especially during rivalry week. Congratulations. Whew, that's the last of it, everyone. No more college football until the tip of August. Don't worry, I'm not going into hibernation or anything like that. I've got many more projects planned in the future, including a whole recap of your clown of the season. And yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise, but Florida State's your clown of the season. Wow, big shocker, I know. I was going to make it a cinematical event, but what's the point when even the surprise is non-existent? In case you're curious, here's my final top 25 for the 2024 season. Whilst you look at that, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my channel members for supporting this channel. I'd also like to thank Mr. UrinatingTree for making a special appearance on this video. As you've seen in the intro, his style is a massive ground for how I did college football chaos, so shout out to him for the support. That'll wrap up the chaos until next season. Until my next project, or whatever the hell I do, I'll see you all later. Power to Tardaria! You know, you could have at least waited until the football season ended for me to suffer again.